The dream always starts the same way, Celine running through rain-slicked woods, her pink backpack bouncing against her spine. I reach for her, but my arms move like they're underwater. Her voice carries back to me, thin and frightened. "Grandma, help." I jolted awake to my phone's harsh ring, the dream's edges still clinging like cobwebs. 4:47 a.m. Tamsin's name flashed on the screen. "Mom." Her voice cracked. "Celine's missing." The word missing hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean, missing?" "She never came home from school yesterday." I thought she might be at a friend's, but no one's seen her. "The police are here, but they're saying we have to wait." "I'm coming over." I was already pulling on clothes, my hands shaking as I fumbled with buttons. "Have you checked the park? The library? We've looked everywhere." Tamsin's composure cracked. "Mom, please hurry." 20 minutes later, I pulled into their driveway. Red and blue lights painted the pristine suburban facade in garish colors. Tamsin stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, while Nolan spoke with two officers. His gesture seemed rehearsed, too controlled for a father whose child was missing. "She's only 10, Tamsin whispered when I reached her. "I should have picked her up myself, but I had this deposition." "We'll find her," I said, but something cold settled in my stomach as Nolan approached. His tie was perfectly straight, his expression appropriately concerned. "Mother-in-law," he nodded. "I've told the police everything. They're doing what they can." "Which isn't much," Tamsin snapped. "They won't even issue an Amber Alert yet." Nolan's hand settled on her shoulder. "Darling, they know what they're doing. We have to trust the process." I watched his fingers tighten slightly on Tamsin's shoulder, and remembered how Celine had flinched during our last visit when he'd made the same gesture. At the time, I'd dismissed it. Now, seeing the shadow that crossed Tamsin's face, I wondered what else I'd been missing. "I'm staying," I announced, meeting Nolan's eyes. Something flickered there, annoyance? Fear? Before his practiced smile returned. "Of course," he said smoothly. "We could use all the support we can get." But his eyes told a different story, and my dream of Celine running through dark woods suddenly felt less like a nightmare and more like a warning. Morning light crept across Tamsin's pristine kitchen as I watched her mechanically stir her third cup of coffee. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually perfect suit was wrinkled from sleeping on the couch. "You should try to rest," I suggested, reaching for her hand. She pulled away, her wedding ring catching the light. "I can't. The partners expect me in court at 9. Surely they'd understand." "They don't understand anything except billable hours." Her laugh was brittle. "Besides, Nolan thinks it's better if we maintain normalcy." The kitchen door swung open, and Nolan appeared, already dressed for the office. "Exactly right, darling. We can't let this derail everything we've built." I noticed how Tamsin's shoulders tensed at his voice. He moved behind her, straightening her collar with practiced efficiency. "You might want to change before heading in. Appearance matters, especially now." "I'll help you pick something," I offered, but Nolan was already steering Tamsin toward the stairs. "I've laid out the navy suit," he called over his shoulder. "The conservative one." Left alone, I opened Celine's backpack, the spare one she'd left at my house last weekend. Inside, tucked between homework assignments, I found a crumpled note in her careful handwriting. "Dear Mom, I'm sorry about the piano recital. I know Dad was disappointed. I'll practice harder next time. Mother-in-law." Nolan's voice made me jump. He stood in the doorway, watching me with those calculating eyes. "The police want to review Celine's routine again. Perhaps you could give us some privacy?" "Of course." I clutched the note in my pocket. "But first, when was Celine's recital?" Something flickered across his face. "Last Thursday." She missed several notes. We had a discussion about dedication afterward. A discussion? I remembered Celine's weekly visits, how she'd practice until her fingers ached, tears in her eyes. She needs to learn discipline. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "We all want what's best for her, don't we?" I nodded, but as I left, I caught a glimpse of Tamsin through their bedroom window. She was changing into the navy suit, her movements mechanical, like a puppet on strings. And suddenly, I understood why my granddaughter might have needed to run. While Tamsin was at court and Nolan at his office, I slipped into Celine's room. The space felt wrong, too pristine like a furniture showroom. No scattered toys, no rumpled bedding. Just rows of books arranged by height and color-coded folders on the desk. Under the mattress, I found a small purple notebook with a broken spine. Celine's diary. My hands trembled as I opened it, knowing I was crossing a line but unable to stop. The first entries were typical 10-year-old concerns: homework, friends, a crush on a classmate. Then the tone shifted. Dad says I'm not trying hard enough. Maybe he's right. I practiced piano for 3 hours, but still can't get it perfect. Mom just looks away when he gets mad. A knock at the front door made me jump. I shoved the diary into my purse and hurried downstairs. Mrs. Chun from next door stood on the porch, wringing her hands. I should have said something sooner, she blurted. About Celine. My heart stuttered. What about her? Last week, I saw her near that old Miller house on Oak Street. She was crying, but when I tried to approach, she ran away. I thought about telling her father, but she hesitated. The way he speaks to her sometimes. Thank you, I said, already reaching for my car keys. The Miller house loomed at the end of Oak Street, its windows dark and accusatory. As I approached, movement caught my eye, a curtain twitching on the second floor. My phone buzzed. Nolan. Just checking in, mother-in-law. Any news about our precious Celine? Something in his voice made my skin crawl. Behind him, I heard papers rustling. Nothing yet. I lied, watching the house. How's work? Challenging. Some financial matters need attention. But everything will be resolved soon. The curtain moved again. This time, I glimpsed a small hand pressing against a glass. I'm sure it will, I said, keeping my voice steady. Everything comes to light eventually. His pause lasted a fraction too long. Indeed it does. We should discuss this over dinner tonight. 7 o'clock. I ended the call, staring at the house. That hand against the window. I'd know those small fingers anywhere. They'd practice piano on my keys every Sunday for years. I found Marlo tending her roses, her detective's eyes sharp despite retirement. Before I could speak, she held up a weathered hand. Inside, she said. The walls here have ears. In her kitchen, I spread out Celine's diary and Mrs. Chen's account. Marlo listened, taking notes in her precise handwriting. There's more, she said finally. I've been watching Nolan's patterns. He makes late-night visits to that Miller house, always between 2 and 3 a.m. My coffee cup clattered against its saucer. You're sure? I'm not the only one watching him. She slid a manila envelope across the table. My old partner at the force pulled these financial records. Nolan's investment firm is under federal investigation. Millions missing from client accounts. The documents swam before my eyes. Bank statements, transfer records, a photograph of Nolan entering an offshore banking facility. He's planning to run, Marlo said quietly. The question is, with or without Celine? My phone buzzed, Tamsin calling. I let it go to voicemail, remembering the small hand at the window. We need proof before we move, Marlo cautioned. One wrong step and a sharp knock at the front door cut her off. Through the window, I glimpsed Nolan's expensive suit. Mother-in-law. His voice carried through the house. Your car's in the driveway. I know you're here. Marlo motioned me toward the back door, quickly gathering the evidence. But as I stood, a receipt fluttered from the envelope, a hardware store purchase for chains, locks, and soundproofing materials. Coming, Marlo called, buying time as I slipped out through her garden. Later, my phone lit up with a text from Nolan. Dinner tonight. Non-negotiable. We need to discuss Celine's future. I typed back, of course, my hand steady despite my racing heart. In my mind, I saw those chains, those locks, and understood with horrible clarity why my granddaughter's room had felt so wrong. It wasn't a bedroom anymore. It was becoming a cage. The Miller house loomed before me in the fading twilight, its windows like dead eyes. I had 30 minutes before dinner with Nolan. 30 minutes to find proof. The back door's lock gave way easily, too easily. Inside, dust covered everything except a clear path through the kitchen. Fresh footprints marked the stairs. My phone buzzed. Tamsin, where are you? Nolan's getting impatient. I silenced it, following the footprints upward. The second floor stretched dark and endless, but one door stood slightly ajar. Inside, the room was empty except for a desk and chair. A child's drawings covered one wall, Celine's distinctive style, her signature butterfly in each corner. Behind the desk, a floorboard creaked under my foot. Hollow. The board lifted easily, revealing a small notebook and a burner phone. The notebook contained columns of numbers, offshore account details, and a flight itinerary for tomorrow night. 2 tickets to Singapore. The phone lit up suddenly, a text message. Everything's ready. The girl won't be a problem. Footsteps creaked downstairs. I shoved everything back, but as I replaced the floorboard, something caught my eye, a small pink thread, caught in a crack. The same color as Celine's favorite sweater. The footsteps grew closer. I slipped into the closet just as the door opened. Through the slats, I saw Nolan enter, speaking quietly into his phone. It's handled. Yes, both problems solved at once. The old woman's too curious for her own good. No, Tamsin suspects nothing. A floorboard creaked behind me. Before I could turn, something hard pressed against my back. Mother-in-law. Nolan's voice came from both in front of me and behind me. You should have stayed out of this. The Nolan by the desk turned his twin brother, I realized too late. The same cold smile, the same dead eyes. Family dinner's been moved. The real Nolan said behind me. Hope you don't mind a change of venue. The closet door swung open, and I saw what the pink thread had been caught on, a trapdoor, leading down into darkness. From somewhere below came the faint sound of a child crying. The basement air was thick with mold and fear. My wrists burned where the zip ties cut into them, but that pain was nothing compared to seeing Celine huddled in the corner, her pink sweater dirty and torn. Grandma? Her voice trembled. I knew you'd find me. Touching. Nolan's brother, Nathan, I'd learned, descended the stairs. Family reunions always get me right here. He tapped his chest with mock sincerity. Nolan followed, carrying a laptop. The transfers are complete. Flight leaves in 3 hours. What about them? Nathan gestured toward us. An unfortunate accident. Nolan opened his phone, showing a news template. Local woman, distraught over missing granddaughter. Burns down abandoned house. Bodies too damaged to identify immediately. Celine whimpered. I shifted closer to her, trying to shield her with my body. Tamsin will never believe it. Tamsin. Nolan's laugh was hollow. She already signed the papers transferring everything to our offshore accounts. She's been helping us hide money for years. She just doesn't know it yet. My daughter's signature flashed on a screen, and I realized how completely he'd trapped us all. Every late night at the office, every legal document she'd signed, had been building to this. Your own wife, I spat. Your own daughter. Collateral damage. He checked his watch. Nathan, get the gasoline. Footsteps creaked overhead. Nathan pulled out a gun, but Nolan waved him off. Probably just rats. This place is falling apart. But I'd heard something else, the faint click of a safety being released. Celine, I whispered. Remember when we practiced piano? What did I always say about timing? She looked up, understanding dawning in her eyes. Wait for the right moment.
Now.
I kicked out at Nathan's legs as Marlowe's voice thundered from above. Police, drop your weapons. Chaos erupted. Nathan fired wildly as Nolan bolted for the hidden exit. In the confusion, I felt Celine's small hands working at my restraints. But then came another shot. Pain bloomed in my shoulder, and through darkening vision, I saw Nolan escape into the shadows. My last thought before consciousness faded was of Tamsin and how I'd failed to protect both my girls from the monster wearing a wedding ring. Hospital fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I signed myself out against medical advice, my shoulder screaming in protest. Marlowe stood guard at the door. Nathan's in custody, she said. But Nolan's flight leaves in 40 minutes. Where's Tamsin? At the airport. She's meeting him there. Doesn't know we're coming. The drive was a blur of sirens and red lights. I clutched the envelope containing everything: the forged signatures, the offshore accounts, Celine's diary. My daughter's entire life, reduced to evidence. We reached the terminal just as Tamsin emerged from her car, wearing the navy suit Nolan always insisted on. She saw me and froze.
Mom?
You're supposed to be. Here, Celine. I cut in, pressing the envelope into her hands. Read it.
Now.
Her hands trembled as she scanned the documents. Each page stripped away another layer of Nolan's facade, revealing the monster beneath. No, she whispered. He wouldn't. Terminal 4. Marlowe's voice cracked through the radio. He's got Celine.
We ran.
Through security, Marlowe's badge clearing the way, past shocked travelers, toward the private aviation terminal. There, through the glass, we saw them. Nolan dragging Celine toward a waiting plane. Stop. Tamsin's voice rang out, stronger than I'd heard in years. Let her go, Nolan. He spun, using Celine as a shield. Darling, you don't understand. I understand everything. She held up the documents. Every signature, every legal document you had me review at midnight. Did you think I wouldn't keep copies? His mask cracked. You knew. I've known for months. The FBI has everything. She stepped forward. It's over. Then we have nothing to lose. He reached into his jacket. I didn't think. I moved. The bullet meant for Tamsin caught me in my already wounded shoulder, but my momentum carried us both down. Celine broke free, running to her mother as Marlowe's team swarmed in. Through the pain, I saw Nolan's face as they cuffed him. Not anger or hatred, but fear. Fear of losing control, of being exposed, of ending up just like his father. But my focus was on Tamsin and Celine, holding each other, finally free. Some wounds would never fully heal, but at least now they could start trying. 6 months later, I sat at my piano, watching Celine practice. Her fingers moved confidently across the keys, no fear in her posture. Through the window, autumn leaves scattered across the lawn of our new home, the one Tamsin bought after selling the mansion. Perfect, I said as she finished the piece. She grinned, a sight that still made my heart leap. Mom's coming to the recital this time, right? Wild horses couldn't stop her. I touched the scar on my shoulder, now a reminder rather than a wound.
The doorbell rang.
Marlowe stood there with a manila envelope. This came from the prison. Thought you should see it first. Inside was a letter from Nolan and a yellowed photograph. 2 young boys, maybe 12, with identical fearful expressions. On the back, in faded ink, Nolan and Nathan, after father's discipline session. The letter was brief. I became what I feared most. Tell Celine I'm sorry. Tell her to keep playing, not for perfection, but for joy. Tamsin's car pulled up outside. She'd started her own practice now, specializing in helping women escape abusive relationships. The navy suit was gone, replaced by colors she chose herself. Mom, Celine called from the piano room. Can we try the duet? I tucked the letter away. Some truths could wait until she was older. Some might never need telling at all. Tamsin joined us at the piano, her hand finding mine as Celine began to play. The melody was simpler than the pieces Nolan had demanded, but it filled the room with something we'd all forgotten: happiness. Later, as darkness fell, I found Celine's old diary on my desk. She'd written a new entry. Sometimes the monsters aren't in the forest. Sometimes they're in our homes, wearing nice suits and saying they love us. But Grandma taught me something important. The brave thing isn't running away from monsters. It's running toward the people who will help you fight them. I closed the diary, listening to Tamsin and Celine laughing in the kitchen. The sound echoed through our home like music, imperfect, perhaps, but perfectly ours.